The content, views, and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the City of Bremerton, BCAT, their officials, or their employees. Welcome to Conversation with a Community Leader, brought to you by the Leadership Kitsap Foundation. I'm your host and Leadership Kitsap alum, Dave Walters. With me today is Rosie Garbe, Executive Director and co-founder of Scarlet Road out of Bremerton. So Rosie, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
It's great to have you here. It's currently estimated that there are roughly 1 million people being exploited and human trafficked in our country today. 75% of them are women and 40% are children under 18, which means there are 400,000 children currently being exploited in our country, most of it with sexual exploitation.
Correct.
So Scarlet Road is an organization who is fighting that on a daily basis here in Kitsap County. So I'm excited to hear what Rosie has to say, and they have this beautiful vision that they have. In their vision, it's a life of freedom for everyone. Mm-hmm. So that's just beautiful. So Rosie, before we start talking about that, let's talk about you. Where are you originally from?
Yeah, I actually grew up in Kitsap. I was born and raised, well, almost born, on Bainbridge Island.
Oh,
Went
all right.
to high school, and then flew the coop for about 10 years.
Great. I didn't. I stayed, but good.
Yeah. So I actually, I went to Washington State. Go Cougs. And I have a degree in economics. And then I began my international journey from there. And I studied abroad, and then for my last year of my undergrad. And then I decided I wanted to go back overseas, and I studied in London for my graduate, and I got a degree in international relations.
Okay.
And then I started working overseas. And so I worked with a little bit. I did some volunteering with the British Red Cross. I did some volunteering with the UN and worked with vulnerable populations in Lebanon. And then I transitioned to working over in Thailand, and it was in Thailand where I got my first really clear understanding of what human trafficking and sexual exploitation looked like over there, working with a couple of small nonprofits, really local organizations. And that is kind of my background for how, so where I went and then how I sort of came back was my stint overseas had finished, and I was not expecting to come back to Kitsap County. Mm-hmm. My family is still here. And I just sort of found myself landed back here and felt like this was where I needed to stay for a variety of reasons.
Okay. And then, so co-founding Scarlet Road, how did that come about? Because that was about in 2008?
Yeah, in 2008. So I graduated high school in 99, did my fun and crazy and experiential, and in working with survivors of sexual exploitation, particularly in Thailand, and then a little bit in the Seattle area. I did some volunteer work with the International Rescue Committee and what was then just forming, which was WARN. WARN is a collaborative organization through several King County-based orgs serving survivors. And in that work, a couple of reasons that sort of spurred me on. One, I think my heart was just really taken by working with survivors, and that was really where I felt my niche. And when I came back to Kitsap County, when I started sharing about the work that I had been involved in, there was just such a complete amount of ignorance and unknown on the topic. And granted, this was 2006, 2007, and people really just had no understanding of what human trafficking was, that it even was a thing. You know, like we'd say human trafficking and people would be like, wait, people are getting hit by cars? Or so, you know.
Right, because when we think human trafficking, we think, the guys that smuggle people into the country or
Yes.
smuggle people across lines. And that's not really what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking, and that is actually a very small
segment of what human trafficking is. And it is significant.
But it is significant. I mean, it's a big number.
But it is not actually who the most vulnerable population is when we're talking about our community, and most of those in the United States. Mm-hmm. So as Scarlet Road began forming, we started asking some really pertinent questions. And our initial plan was not to just start an organization. It was to better inform people that this existed.
Okay.
And so the more we did that, the more we started asking questions about, well, what's actually happening in Kitsap County? What's happening in our communities and in our neighborhoods? And what we realized is that essentially what sexual exploitation looks like is youth, as you said, in our community falling victim to prostitution, pornography, being used for survival sex, and huge amounts of it happening right under our noses because we just simply weren't looking for it.
And quite honestly, you know, the dark side of this, which it is very dark, does best in the dark.
Right.
Right. It's
correct.
hidden.
If
they
you don't
try
look
to be
for
under
it,
the radar. So
they don't
you
want to
really
be
need
found.
to spawn a spotlight on it.
Right. Correct.
So that's how you started off. Interesting.
That's how we started off, and the more we asked questions and the more we understood how it was impacting our community, the more we also realized that survivors were falling through the cracks in existing resources. And that's really what catapulted us as a community of people, really, at that point in time, to saying, we really feel like we need to serve this population more effectively. And so we're going to move forward and create a service organization that's really tailored to their unique needs. And that's critical, I think, as far as the foundation of Scarlet Road on the whole. Everything we do has been set up specifically to reduce the barriers and serve effectively the survivor population and learn from them.
Okay. And so learn their needs, learn what they need to really get out of that life.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to kind of double back on it, because I want us to be crystal clear on this. There is exploited sex workers in Kitsap County.
Absolutely. Last year, Scarlet Road served over 200 people.
Okay.
In 1 year.
So it is active in Kitsap County.
Active in Kitsap County. And I would say we're scratching the surface.
Okay.
As far as numbers, because we're a very small organization and we're only seeing the people who are coming forward for support, right? Mm-hmm. The people who aren't able to come forward for support are still out there or who aren't identified.
And there are lots of reasons why people can't get out of that lifestyle.
Yes.
Right? It's they're either actually, I want you to tell me.
Well, as you said, it's underground, right? So by the nature of exploitation is how can I isolate this individual so that they don't have the ability to reach out and ask for help? Some of that happens just simply because of the nature of the type of exploitation. It's hard to talk about sex, right? And abusive sex environments. Our society isn't really set up to digest that information well. And so there's a lot of shame around the whole issue. And for survivors, having to go through and regurgitate their story is extremely traumatic. So just that piece is a barrier. And then add on the layer that there's great intentionality by an abuser to keep a victim in that space of victim, right? So they're going to do whatever it takes to keep that person away from resources, away from supportive individuals, away from accessing help in a lot of different ways. That could be that they're restricting that person's ability to go out and talk to other people or to engage with any type of resource. For example, we have a lot of survivors coming into our program who haven't had medical support in a really long time, even though they maybe need it, just because their abuser is saying, no, you're not allowed to go to the doctor, right?
And these abusers are motivated by a couple different reasons, right? There's just a true perversion of the whole thing, but some of them are probably motivated by financial purposes too.
There is so much money to be made in selling another human being.
I saw in prepping for this, the FBI's website said it's a $10 billion a year.
At least.
And they said that's only what they know. So it's a minimum, a $10 billion a year industry in our country which is sex exploitation, which is slavery.
Exactly.
It's slavery for
it is
horrible purposes.
Forcing or coercing another individual to use their body for the exchange of resources. That's how our legal terminology defines that. So there is a transaction always, whether it's financial or need-based, right? And I think that's sometimes overlooked. We don't always think about the need-based realities of exploitation, but they're really rampant. And often we see that happening, particularly within family units when we see familial trafficking, which we see a lot of in Kitsap, where a family member is selling another family member, and that typically looks like a parent or an older family member selling a child or a youth. And but it's not always for money. It could be for rent. It could be for drugs. It could be for food, right? So it's more complex than the dollar transaction than we make it. However, there's a ton of money to be made in this. And some examples, if we look at, for example, the porn industry, we legitimize that industry. And yet we know that there is a huge amount of exploitation and trafficking happening within that industry. We know how much pornography is making annually, right? But we don't know how much juvenile pornography is making, right? Which juvenile pornography is sexual exploitation of a child. So we're not quantifying all of the dollars. I would say 10 billion is low.
Wow. It's just mind-numbing that in 2025 in our country
that it's happening.
That's happening.
Yeah.
Even when you think about, I mean, just horrified in doing the research for Kitsap County alone. So how do these people find themselves in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
there's probably there's also a million.
There's a lot of different avenues for falling victim to exploitation, right? I think that the baseline. Well, there's two baselines. The one that we haven't talked about yet is that there is simply a demand for this, and we don't talk about that a lot as a society.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing.
There's a demand to purchase other people's body for sex, right? Which that all of a sudden we all go, ooh, that doesn't feel nice as a part of our community.
It's horrible as part of our community.
Yeah. So that's the first hurdle, the first issue, right? Why somebody falls victim. And it is that it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with how our society is structured right now. The pathways into exploitation start with the intent of an abuser. And so depending on the environment or the situation where that may be happening can look different. For example, I referenced familial trafficking.
Yeah, the family.
Right? So those avenues may look like they may be coming out of need, or they may be coming out of a desire for something, right? It could be drugs, or it could be
money, or
simply
whatever.
Perversion, right? There are other cases, though, when we're talking about, for example, one of the most common exploitation situations that we see is, it has been in the past referred to as like boyfriend pimping. And that's really where it is an intimate partner approaches somebody, grooms them into a trusting relationship with the intent of then turning that around and saying, well, you owe me because I've taken care of you, or I've given you this or that, or I've protected you, or whatever that may be in that grooming process, where they're giving them something and saying, you owe me now, so you need to go and do this thing. That might be shooting a porn video, or it might be saying, you need to go and sleep with my friend, or these guys, or these gals, right? I want to be gender neutral here because we see both female and male and non-gender all being exploited. And so there's a lot of different reasons and a lot of different pathways, but ultimately the end goal is how am I able to manipulate or force somebody into this act of selling?
It all starts with that, the want and the predator.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then once you're there, you're kind of trapped.
Right.
You don't really feel like you know how to get out of that. So the step back is really hard to make. So you end up just falling further and further into this situation that's very orchestrated by an abuser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's laid out and thought out and planned and plotted. So how do we get people out of this horrible situation?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that a really critical space is in that identification place. And the reason for that is that a lot of the time survivors are not raising their hand and they're saying, help.
Right.
I need support.
Because of all the barriers that get put in front of them by their abusers.
By their abusers and the shame. So it is often that there are intersections where they're interacting with individuals in our community. That may be friends and family, that may be a community resource of some sort, that may be law enforcement or the court system. Mm-hmm. And that then forms an opportunity where there's an identification that maybe they've said something where something doesn't feel right? That doesn't sound right. Or maybe they're just outright communicating that this is happening to them, but they're not necessarily asking for help, or they don't know that help's even available, right? So in those spaces, the critical time is for an advocate for Scarlet Road to be able to be well connected within the community as a whole, so that when somebody is being identified, that we can come in and say, or that potentially being identified, right? It might just be like, I don't know what's going on with this person, but I have some really big concerns, right? And an advocate can come in and sit down and chat with that individual and start asking really strategic questions and building trust and helping them understand that there's safety and support when they're ready. When they're ready is really key. And I think that this is important. It often can feel like it's our job to rescue somebody. But in reality, they have to make choices towards a change in their life. And so you can put that opportunity out there, but if they're not ready to start making those steps forward, they're not going to be successful in changes in their life. And in likelihood, there's a very high likelihood if they're not ready that they're going to go back to their abuser.
Fall back to the same.
Yeah, or to the abusive environment that they're in. So this is a really big piece for us that we work on with the partners that the different organizations, the systems, law enforcement that we work with, to say, like, we have to be able to build a framework where they are empowered to be able to say, yes, I'm able to take the next step. Because if they're not.
Okay, so let's talk about partnering. Who do you partner with?
Yeah, partnership is so critical at Scarlet Road. So we partner with nonprofits across Kitsap County. We partner with our systems, our court system, our law enforcement throughout the community. And one of the ways, for example, that we do that is we are a part of the Kitsap County Human Trafficking Task Force.
So we actually have a Kitsap County Human Trafficking Task Force.
We do, and it involves a variety of system-involved individuals. Like we have the leader from Juvie there. We have law enforcement from several different precincts there. We have some local nonprofit leaders there. Court. It's facilitated by a judge, by Judge Hemstreet. So. It's really critical because this is an issue that crosses so many, as I said earlier, intersections, right? And it's really important that we're all on the same page as far as moving things forward.
Like you said, it only takes one intersection of someone identifying the person that needs help.
Yeah.
To get the things going.
Yeah. So for an example of that might be like we've worked really closely with the Kitsap County Jail over the last few years. And so their reentry team has the skills and is able to sort of identify this person may be being exploited, as well as we now have a screening tool inside jail that individuals can do themselves. It's a self-facilitated screening tool. And when they're screened in as being an exploitation survivor, our advocates can go into the jail and serve them before they're released so that their reentry is tailored to a survivor's needs. So that takes a lot of coordination from a lot of different bodies, right? But that's really what a survivor needs. They need that on the back end happening to be successful moving forward. So partnership is really, really critical. And it doesn't just look like systems partnerships. It looks like we try to equip local nonprofits with our school systems. We go into our schools and teach a curriculum in middle school and high schools.
Because teachers are probably,
Teachers are frontline, right? And they need to know how to identify. Kids actually are a frontline. Peer-to-peer, right? They're identifying these things happening often before parents are.
Oh, okay.
So that information is actually incredibly critical within the school systems. And they are often the ones who are saying, hey, this isn't safe for either myself or for my friend, right? They're seeing, and then they maybe will tell a teacher or tell a counselor or tell somebody else in their life what's going on. So partnership is so important. So, and some other ways that we partner is looking ahead is big events or big activities that are happening or community-wide.
We have FIFA coming up.
We have FIFA coming up, right? So some people know this. Bremerton's actually an official fan zone.
Yep. They're lucky enough to get that. That was spectacular.
It's cool, yeah. And also,
but with that come a lot of problems.
With that comes, anytime there are large sporting events, we see a huge spike in the demand for exploitation, which the way that we want to combat that, this looking forward to 2026, is we want to have a really coordinated effort. And so part of being on that human trafficking task force, right, we want the task force and our community at large to be saying, no, this isn't okay. We don't want to condone this. We're going to make it hard for this to happen.
Actively make it hard.
Actively make it hard and deter our community.
So that leads me to my next question. How can the average Kitsap County community member help?
Yeah.
What can I do to help stop this horrific human trafficking, this sexual exploitation?
Some really important ways. First and foremost, Scarlet Road is a small nonprofit organization that exists because our community believes that this is important work. And so financially, we have to have the dollars from our community coming up behind us. And so giving to Scarlet Road on a monthly basis is what keeps our doors open.
Okay, because it's really easy. I saw your website set up for monthly giving or one-time giving. So hit their website.
Yep, so that's one piece. Another piece is if you want to volunteer, it's a great place to volunteer because we really care about our volunteers and we really want to know where you can serve us best and how we can serve you best as a volunteer. So that's another way.
But do I need to be a counselor? Do I need to have
You don't.
specific
We have
experience to volunteer?
so many volunteer opportunities.
Okay.
So whatever your skills and your passion is, we
can
want to
use
get
it.
to know it and we want to use it.
Okay.
So volunteering, you can learn about that on our website as well. So go to our website and hit the volunteer tab, and there's a bunch of information there. The last thing that I want to say is learn. Educate yourself. This is a topic that has so much information out there now. It didn't when we started in 2008, but now there's so much information to learn about this, both locally and internationally, all across the board, nationally. So start learning about this. Choose to educate yourself because the result of educating yourself is that you're going to start talking to your community and the people around you about this. And that's ultimately what survivors need. Survivors need people in our community to understand this issue and to be actively making change in our community towards this issue.
So really pull it out of the dark into the light.
That's right. Yeah. So talk about it. But first you need to learn about it.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everything Scarlet Road does for our community, especially the most vulnerable. And thank you for watching another episode of Conversation with a Community Leader. And please go to scarletroad.org and leadershipkitsap.org for more information. So thank you, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.